Chapter 13. The Genetic Algorithm, GA. Blind Production of the Combinatorial Phenotype. Can data generated by an idealized computer model provide useful insights about natural evolutionary systems? Stephanie Forrest, 1993. Metaphors can be useful tools that help to illustrate the enduring core of natural selection in the context of the updated evolutionary synthesis, UES, even when they have teleological overtones. Such metaphors include the blind watchmaker, the tinkerer, the Rube Goldberg device, the opportunist, the scrapyard, the toolkit, the black box, and trial and error. These metaphors help to illustrate the power of a software technique known as the genetic algorithm, GA, which was inspired by natural selection. The GA has also been used in simulations that demonstrate the creative power of genetic recombination, which does more than simply reshuffle genetic determinants. Metaphors for natural selection that are still useful. The absence of awareness, consciousness, goal-seeking, sentience, intelligence, choices, and design are fundamental aspects of natural selection. They are also among the most challenging for human beings to understand because of the way that our brains are wired. In the fast mode of human thinking, we are wired to react to real-time, actual events, usually those we can see or hear, because that was essential during the evolution of our ancestors. In the slow mode of human thinking, we are goal-seeking storytellers and intelligent goal-seeking designers. We understand the world by analyzing and attaching labels, and we plan strategies in an intentional fashion. Natural selection does not work in the way that our brains are wired. Yet natural selection has extraordinary organizing power, and there is no shortage of examples where the complexity and efficacy of adaptations far exceed human capabilities. Metaphors can be useful in providing a deep understanding and appreciation of the ways that natural selection differs from human designs. Several kinds of useful metaphors are briefly summarized as follows. The metaphor of the blind watchmaker. Richard Dawkins' clever reply to William Paley's metaphor of the watchmaker is captured in the title of his popular book, The Blind Watchmaker. Clearly, natural selection routinely generates remarkably complex and intricate adaptations, but it does so in a blind fashion. As we'll see shortly, however, metaphorical blindness in this context is a feature and not a bug. The metaphor of the tinkerer. The Wikipedia page for tinkering redirects to one called bricolage. In the arts, bricolage, French for DIY or do-it-yourself projects, is the construction or creation of a work from a diverse range of things that happen to be available, or a work created by mixed media. In the context of natural selection, creation of useful adaptations most definitely arises from a diverse range of things that happen to be available. They consist of genetic determinants, prior innovations, and structures and functions that depend on EEP, Chapter 2, and SSM-IBE, Chapter 12. The metaphor of the Rube Goldberg device. The Wikipedia description of a Rube Goldberg device is a machine intentionally designed to perform a simple task in an indirect and overcomplicated fashion. Often these machines consist of a series of simple devices that are linked together to produce a domino effect, in which each device triggers the next one, and the original goal is achieved only after many steps. It is important to recognize that there is no intention involved in natural selection. Nevertheless, the results are often reminiscent of a domino effect, in which each device triggers the next one, and the useful result, in the life of the cell or organism, is achieved only after many steps. Signal transduction pathways often involve these sorts of cascades of events. The reasons that the products of natural selection resemble Rube Goldberg machines can be found in the emergent ways that SSM-IBE arises from the emergent properties of macromolecules, and the way that previous innovations pave the way for new levels of complexity to arise, often by coalescence. The metaphor of the opportunist. Since selection acts on the phenotypic gestalt, which is often created by a diverse range of things that happen to be available, it appears opportunistic. In this case, opportunism is an entirely blind and unconscious natural result. The metaphor of the scrapyard or toolkit. The metaphors of the genomic scrapyard or toolkit and the developmental toolkit have already been mentioned in earlier chapters. Natural selection often involves exaptation, redeployment with or without modification of an element that evolved for a different reason, and reuse of genetic elements is widespread and commonplace. The metaphor of the black box. The metaphor of a black box is useful in the sense that selection acts on the phenotypic gestalt, and useful phenotypic gestalts can arise from a diverse range of things that happen to be available. The combinations and sequences of events that lead to a useful result are like a black box to natural selection because they arise in a blind fashion without any awareness by natural processes. The metaphor of trial and error. Since in each generation, individuals must compete in the struggle for existence, and since variation is extensive, only a few combinations of variants will be selected because they generate the most useful phenotypes. Selection acts at the level of real time, actual events that involve both the individual and its environment. Therefore, repeated rounds of variation and selection resembles a trial and error operation. As long as we realize that this process does not involve deliberate choices or awareness, the metaphor is apt. All of these metaphorical attributes of natural selection demonstrate why natural selection became the inspiration for a powerful problem-solving software technique known as the genetic algorithm, which will be discussed in the following sections.